Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Hello and welcome to Rao's IAS DNS session. We are going to have a discussion on today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition dated 2nd November 2021. We shall pick up articles important for civil service examination and discuss them as per the demand of the exam. But first thing first, there will be no DNS on 3rd, 4th and 5th of November because of Diwali. So have a colorful, bright and safe Diwali for 3 days, take a good break and come back rejuvenated. The next important thing is the announcement concerning Rankers batch. Like every year, this year also, we are going to form a Ranker batch for the coming mains examination. It's a special effort from our side for people who are going to put special effort from their side. We are here to help you in this endeavor, and for that, we are going to have a single point of contact for you from Rao's IAS team for personal mentorship. There are going to be online interactive revision classes. You'll be given 9 mains related booklets. You'll have full access to the mains test series and the full-length test that will comprise 15 tests. Detailed evaluation and feedback will be given to you when you attempt the tests. There's a link in the description and you need to fill in your details through that form to get admission in this Rankers batch. Before we begin, let me quickly show you something. In the Civil Service Prelims examination this year, UPSC has asked a question, what is blue carbon? And in the full-length test too, we have asked a similar question. The question had 2 statements. The first statement of the question was carbon stored in coastal and marine ecosystem is known as blue carbon. The comparison is unmistakable. It's a kind of thing that gives us feedback that we are guiding you correctly and also will strengthen trust of yours in us that you are in safe hands. This article is from page number 1. India will achieve net zero emission by 2070. We'll have a short discussion on recent COP26 meeting in Scottish capital, Glasgow. Indian Prime Minister has made clear India's stand and the target that India has put related to climate change in yesterday's COP26 meeting at Glasgow. These 5 targets that India has put forward, you have to memorize for the coming mains examination. By 2030, India targets to increase non-fossil fuel capacity to 500 gigawatt. Energy capacity of India presently is around 400 gigawatt, a little less than that. And India has edged close to the target of 40% of that coming from renewable energy. So roughly, it's around 160 gigawatt presently. The target is to increase it from here to 500 gigawatt by 2030. India also has targeted to fulfill 50% of its energy requirement with renewable energy by 2030, which seems to be easily achievable given that India already has edged close to the 40% mark. These targets will be achieved through some strategy. One strategy that has been put forward is to reduce 1 billion ton of total projected carbon emission between 2021 and 2030. Meaning whatever the projected carbon emission was in the beginning of decade, the target is to reduce that projection by 1 billion ton. India also has targeted to reduce Indian economy's carbon intensity to less than 45% by 2030. Carbon intensity or emission intensity is the level of greenhouse gas emission per unit of economic activity, which is usually measured at the national level as GDP. So the level of greenhouse gas emission per unit of GDP is what is economy's carbon intensity. And India has put forward not so ambitious target of net zero emission by 2070. And that is a good sign because to meet the Paris Agreement target to keep the world temperature within 1.5 degrees Celsius of pre-industrial level, the intensities must peak by 2030 and net zero emissions must be reached by 2050. Net zero emission refers to a balance where emissions of greenhouse gases that raise the global temperature continue but are offset by absorption of an equivalent amount of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So whatever is emitted out gets reabsorbed. Net zero emission is considered as a milestone in climate change action. United States, Britain and European Union have set a target of 2050 for net zero. And they are quite advanced in carbon capture technology. So they are confident that they will reach to the net zero emission target by 2050. China and Saudi Arabia both have set the target as 2060. But experts and critics point out that these year does not matter. Alok Sharma, the president of COP26, has said that the science is clear that the window of time we have to keep the goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius alive and to avoid worst effect of climate change is closing fast. It is pointed out by experts and climate scientists that emissions must be halved by 2030 and it must be brought to net zero by 2050. If this pathway is not followed, then the adverse effect of climate change cannot be avoided. So just putting out the net zero emission year is not sufficient. The nations must also have set the target to cut down the emission by half by 2030. India has spelled out a strategy to fight climate change at COP26. You see, India has batted for adaptation as a means for climate change action. The difference between climate change mitigation strategy and climate change adaptation whereas adaptation looks how to reduce negative effects and how to take any advantage of opportunities arising because of climate change. If mitigation strategies fail to reach its target, climate resilience will be key to lessen the impact of climate change. So, anyhow, adaptation has to be there, and India, with other developing countries, focuses on adaptation more than mitigation. Because in India, there is need of development. The 12th five-year plan of India called for faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. Growth is important for a developing country like India. India's per capita GDP is around $1965. The global average is 10,000. Per capita energy consumption of India is 1/5 of global average, and per capita energy consumption is an indicator of level of development and standard of living. Around 300 million people in India do not have access to electricity. 55% of households are living in mud or semi-concrete households as per the 2011 census. The need for employment is increasing and hence the need of industrialization. There's a target for doubling the farmer's income. And all these things cannot happen without pushing up the engine of growth. So growth is required and hence we look for adaptation techniques. So it has been spelled out by India that we must make adaptation a core part of our development policies and projects. Prime Minister has mentioned about various schemes like Nal Se Jal. There has been mention of Clean Ujjwala Yojana. There also has been mention of Clean India Mission. These are developmental projects, but not just developmental because they are adaptive in nature. They bring environmental benefits and also enhances the quality of life of people. Just as the extension of adaptive measures, there is climate resilient infrastructure development building. India also has called for climate resilient infrastructure at COP26. From sources of drinking water to affordable housing, they all need to be made resilient against climate change. See, infrastructure is developed for long term. If we make it resilient, it will prevent disasters not only for ourselves, but also for future generation. When a bridge is lost, a telecom tower falls, or power system fails, or when a school is damaged, the loss is not just the direct damage. We should look at losses holistically. Indirect losses due to disruption of a small business and interrupted schooling of children may be several times higher. We need the right accounting perspective for a holistic evaluation of the situation. If we make our infrastructure resilient, we will reduce both direct and indirect losses and protect the livelihood of millions. That's the idea for climate resilient infrastructure. And to implement the idea, India also has pushed for a global coalition and greater participation in this global coalition that India has been leading with the help of UK. That is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. An important determinant of effectiveness of climate change action ideas is global financing. In the spirit of climate justice, it has been called by India that rich and developed countries provide at least $1 trillion, $1,000 billion in climate finance in assisting developing countries and the most vulnerable nations in their climate change actions. India also has demanded that the rule book for Paris Agreement better be concluded at COP26 itself. The rule book for Paris Agreement will set it in motion by laying out the tools and processes to enable it in getting implemented fairly and properly. Countries actually have agreed to finalize the Paris Rulebook at COP24 itself, that was held in Poland in 2018. But the rulebook has not been finalized yet, and India wants the rulebook to be prepared by giving effect to the principle of equity and common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, recognizing the very different national circumstances of parties. Parties in UNFCCC vocabulary is used for member nations, and hence the meeting is called as Conference of Parties. Prime Minister Modi also has talked about cognitive change with regard to climate change action, and topics of climate change should be taught in schools. There's a need to include climate change adaptation policies in school syllabus to make the next generation well aware of the issues cognitively. This, in short, is the strategy of India for climate change action. This article is from page number 1. Cannot impose blanket ban on all firecrackers, says Supreme Court. In 2015 mains examination in GS paper 2, UPSC has asked a question. Does the right to clean environment entail legal regulation on burning crackers during Diwali? Discuss in the light of Article 21 of Indian Constitution and judgments of the Apex Court in this regard. This question has asked important issues related to firecracker ban. So we will guide our discussion in the direction of what has been asked in the question. See, Supreme Court has set aside the blanket ban on firecracker, which was previously imposed by the Calcutta High Court. Supreme Court has said that its stand is consistent with its own judgment of 2018. Calcutta High Court actually has prohibited the sale, purchase, use, display of all kind of firecrackers in all type of upcoming festivals. Because of this blanket ban on sale of firecrackers, the firecracker industry filed a review petition in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has put a stay on the judgment of the Calcutta High Court, but it has set up certain rules for regulation. Many of them were already present in its own judgment of 2018. Supreme Court just has added few new regulations. In the 2018 judgment, Supreme Court has held that Article 21, that is right to life, applies to both segment of people, the firecrackers manufacturers and the people in the supply chain, and people in general. Supreme Court also said that it needs to maintain a balance while considering a countrywide ban on firecrackers. So two things. Article 21 applies to all segment of people, and there has to be a balance in judgment. But Supreme Court also dismissed the argument that burning firecracker was a fundamental right. Supreme Court has been using the essential practice doctrine in identifying the important practices of religion to decide the precedence of rights of different section of people. Supreme Court has said that using firecracker is not an essential practice for the festival like Diwali. And using this essential practice doctrine, Supreme Court actually gives precedence to right to life under Article 21 over right to freedom of religion under Article 25. Also, if the religious practice is threatening the health and lives of people, such kind of practice is not entitled to get protection under Article 25. So this is 21 versus 25. Supreme Court in the judgment also declared that right to business is also not an absolute right under Article 19(1)(g). So the fundamental among all is Article 21, right to life. This is the legal idea that Supreme Court put forward. And to give effect to this, Supreme Court gave certain regulations. The court banned production and sale of all firecrackers except green crackers. As the name suggests, green crackers would be less harmful. The court held that blanket ban of firecracker is not a wise step, and the firecrackers found injurious to health, they need to be banned. Supreme Court in its regulatory measures have banned the sale of joint crackers and specifically prohibited the use of barium salt in fireworks. Heavy metals are more harmful. Supreme Court also laid down the rule that firecrackers won't be sold online, and only licensed trader can sell the firecrackers. Green crackers, as the name suggests, are less dangerous, they are less harmful. There have been many scientific institutions like Central Electoral Research Institute, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, among others. They have been developing green crackers with a name like Safe Water Releaser, Safe Thermite Cracker, STAR, Safe Minimal Aluminum, SAFAL. Just pick up this name, can be asked in the prelims exam. The science and art that goes behind making firecracker is releasing water vapor or dust suppressant. They help in absorption or restricted expansion of the gaseous emissions. But green crackers also match up the performance in terms of sound and light with conventional crackers. This is about judgment of 2018. Supreme Court has now adhered to the same judgment, but court has added that the use of green crackers would be allowed in areas where air quality is good or moderate, since the air quality index has become common in use. Supreme Court, via various judgments, has established the relation between ecology and right to life under Article 21. That right to life is a fundamental right under Article 21, and since right to life also connotes quality of life. A person has the right to pollution-free air and water to enjoy the life fully. In the Dehradun quarrying case in 1998, Supreme Court recognized right to live in healthy environment as part of Article 21. This was the beginning of linking ecology with right to life. A landmark judgment, MC Mehta case. Here, Supreme Court strengthened its stand taken in Dehradun quarrying case. It said that right to live in pollution-free environment is par to life, and Supreme Court gave many doctrines and principles in this regard. Supreme Court accepted the doctrine of public trust, which rests on the premise that certain natural resources like air, sea, water are means for general use and cannot be restricted to private ownership. These resources are gift of nature and the state act as the trustee and is duty bound to protect them. The state is the trustee and general public are beneficiary of such natural resources. Supreme Court also laid down precautionary principle, which means that the state government and the concerned authorities must anticipate, prevent, and attack the causes of environmental degradation. Polluters pay principle has been embedded in the legal jurisprudence in India. The beginning was in the MC Mehta case. The principle imposes liability on a person who pollutes the environment to compensate for the damage caused and return the environment to its original state regardless of the intent. Now, in this regard, there is a principle of absolute liability. Supreme Court has laid down this principle of absolute liability for harm to the environment, and it means that the liability extends not only to compensate the victim of pollution, but also the cost of restoration of environmental degradation. And this liability is regardless of the intent. According to absolute liability rule, there is no exception of strict liability. Strict liability apply only in certain cases. In absolute liability, there is unlimited liability to compensate victims adequately. In Vellore's Citizen Welfare Forum case, polluter pay principle was strengthened by Supreme Court. Supreme Court said that it is essential for sustainable development. Supreme Court also clarified that the onus of proof is on the actor or the developer, the industrialist, to show that his action is environmentally benign. In the Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action, the court held that once the activity carried on is hazardous or inherently dangerous, the person carrying on such activity is liable to make good the losses caused to any other person by his activity, irrespective of the fact whether he took reasonable care while carrying on his activity. So this was again strengthening the absolute liability principle. In the AP Pollution Control Board versus MV Naidu, Supreme Court has explained the relation between ecological issues and fundamental rights. Environmental concerns arising in courts under Article 32 or 226 or 136 are of equal importance as human rights concern. In fact, both are to be traced back to Article 21, which deals with fundamental right to life and liberty. While environmental aspects concerns life, the human right aspects concerns liberty. For the mains examination, these judgments are very important concerning judicial action in environmental conservation. There is an article on page number 7, Veneer Quota Law Unconstitutional, High Court. Regarding this article, we shall have a fundamental discussion on the issue of subclassification within scheduled caste. Supreme Court in E.V. Chinnaiya case said that scheduled castes are constitutionally homogeneous group. This is the nucleus of the discussion that we are going to have. This is the central question in your hand right now, whether scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are constitutionally homogeneous. If they are, then subclassification will not be constitutionally valid. If they are not, then states can subclassify scheduled caste to enable the weakest among the weak to get the benefit of reservation. But in Chinaya judgment, Supreme Court held that scheduled castes are constitutionally homogeneous. So states do not have the power to further subclassify scheduled caste and scheduled tribe for grant of quotas in jobs and admissions to educational institutions. The argument was that inter se classification, meaning classification within the group, violated Article 14, right to equality. Supreme Court reasoned that the declaration of a caste as a scheduled caste in the presidential list issued under Article 341 meant that any scheduled caste group gets subsumed in the broader categorization of scheduled castes under Article 341. Constitutionally, there is no provision of subclassification of scheduled caste under Article 341. Only the President has the power to notify inclusion or exclusion of a caste as a scheduled caste, and states cannot tinker with the list. The court reasoned that it was the power in the hand of the President to include or to exclude a caste from the list of scheduled caste, and subclassification by the states will be tinkering with this power of the President. So on these grounds, E.V. Chinaya judgment disallowed subclassification. For the prelims examination, you must be aware that the President under Article 341 and Article 342 notifies scheduled caste and scheduled tribe respectively. And the consent of the Parliament is required to exclude or to include any caste in the list. States do not have power over this. So states cannot unilaterally add or pull out a caste from this list of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So it seems like the power of the center and states playing along with it amounts to tinkering with the power of the center and that of President according to the Chinaya judgment. Chinaya judgment was delivered in 2004, and in 2010 the Punjab and Haryana High Court, relying on Chinaya judgment, struck down a law of Punjab government empowering the government to subclassify scheduled caste and scheduled tribe for the grant of quota. This has been done by many states, and even presently subclassification is already in operation in the state of Tamil Nadu. Even Bihar has done subclassification. But this particular judgment of Punjab government was struck down by Punjab High Court. And Punjab High Court relied on the Supreme Court judgment in the Chinaya verdict. Then against this judgment of Punjab High Court, appeal was done in the Supreme Court. And the case came to be known as Devendra Singh versus State of Punjab. And this is the case on which judgment has been given yesterday. Yesterday, in the Devendra Singh case, Supreme Court has taken an opinion contrary to Chinaya judgment. The Constitutional Bench of Supreme Court has made observation that reservation has created inequality within the reserve caste itself. The court has reasoned that states cannot be deprived of the power to take care of qualitative and quantitative differences among the scheduled caste and take appropriate measures to provide equity in the welfare scheme of the government. So the state governments cannot be deprived of the power to provide differential treatment to the citizens to provide equity. The court also has taken a very stern position that citizens cannot be treated to be socially and educationally backward till perpetuity, forever, till eternity. The court stated that those who have come up must be excluded like creamy layer. This is extremely important for you to note. The concept of creamy layer has not been applied in SC/STs yet. The concept of creamy layer operates only in case of OBC. But court seems to have taken the opinion of economic backwardness as one measure of backwardness. And that is why this concept of creamy layer has been talked about. I'm highlighting this because this is the core issue in the debate of reservation policy in India. Whether the reservation has to be given on basis of caste or it has to be given on the basis of economic condition. Supreme Court now seems to be in mood of giving reservation on basis of economic condition even within the framework of reservation on basis of caste. And finally, Supreme Court has said that subclassification within the presidential list of Article 341 does not amount to tinkering with it, as no caste is excluded from the list. Only their subclassification is being done to prioritize which group need greater help from the state. In the Chinaya judgment, Supreme Court said that subclassification is violative of Article 14 and of Article 341 because it violated right to equality and it tinkered with the power of precedent. In the Devendra Singh case, Supreme Court seems to have alluded to the same article but has drawn different conclusion. It is not violative of Article 14 because it is a settled issue in law that reasonable classification can be done, and that will not be violative of Article 14, right to equality. And further, the Supreme Court is saying that since no caste is excluded from the list, so it does not tinker with the power of precedent to exclude or include any group from the list of scheduled caste under Article 341. So it's a matter of interpretation, and a larger bench will settle this legal question. There are two things that you have to think right now. Number one, are scheduled castes constitutionally homogeneous? And number two, can the concept of creamy layer be applied in case of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? Because this has not been applied yet. So basically, these are the two questions that you have to understand in this particular issue. In all likelihood, rather it is almost certain that the larger bench of Supreme Court that will be constituted will go with the Devendra Singh case observation and overturn the Chinaya judgment. There are reasons for that I'm going to spell out. There are many reasons and arguments given in favor of subclassification of scheduled caste. If you look from the social perspective, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described Indian society as a gradation of caste, forming an ascending scale of reverence and descending scale of contempt, meaning it forms a hierarchical society. With people in the lower rung, they are subjugated more. And in this kind of hierarchical gradation of caste, there cannot be two castes being equal. So in the structure itself, there is inherent difference. So this calls for subclassification of caste so that the caste which has been historically more subjugated, ostracized, they get the benefit of the scheme of reservation. Then there are legal arguments, and this is very important to understand. Listen very carefully. There is no legal hurdle in subclassification of scheduled caste. It is constitutionally valid. Look, if you read barely Article 14, Article 341, you wouldn't know whether it's valid or not. The constitutional validity of anything is told to us by the Supreme Court through its judgment, because the right to interpret the Constitution is constitutionally given to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court in the 9-judge bench in the Indira Sawhney case recognized the differential backwardness in Indian society, and it held that it is perfectly legal for the state to categorize backward classes as backward and more backward, meaning subclassification of OBCs was allowed by the Supreme Court in the Indira Sawhney case. But then this was for OBCs. In the Indira Sawhney case, Supreme Court took up the issue of reservation for other backward classes. And in that, it pronounced that subclassification of OBCs was legally, constitutionally permissible. But we are dealing with the question of subclassification of SC/STs. And Indira Sawhney case did not say anything about SC/STs. But when we see Indira Sawhney case together with Subhash Chandra case of 2009, then the story becomes clear. Supreme Court held in the Subhash Chandra judgment that backward classes in Article 16(4) include scheduled caste and scheduled tribe for all intent and purpose of providing benefit to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Article 16(4) reads like this: Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for the reservation of appointments or posts in favor of any backward class of citizens, which in the opinion of the state is not adequately represented in service under the state. So Article 16.4 is talking about reservation for backward class. And in the Chandra Shubhas case, Supreme Court has said that backward class in 16.4 will include scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Now when you read this statement from Indra Sawhney case, that subclassification of backward class is allowed and backward class includes scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. That means subclassification of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe will also be allowed. So these two cases of Supreme Court has made it clear that subclassification will be allowed. And that is why I have told you earlier that the 7-judge bench that will be formed shortly will allow this subclassification of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe in all likelihood. Then there are statistical arguments that subclassification should be done. We do not have the detailed data of representation of all the subcastes in government and educational institutions. But we do have data for many subcastes among scheduled caste, for the purpose of which a special commission or a special committee was formed to inquire into. I'm giving you one such example. There is a scheduled caste called as Aruntathiyars in the state of Tamil Nadu. They constitute nearly 16% of the total scheduled caste population in the state, and Justice Janarthanam Commission observed that their representation in government departments and educational institutions was between 0 to 5%, meaning they were underrepresented within scheduled caste communities. So in 2009, Tamil Nadu reserved 3% of total seats in educational institutions and state services for Aruntathiyars community. So they did subclassification of scheduled caste already. And such subclassification exists in many states. So statistically, it also shows that some of the scheduled caste are more underrepresented. They have been historically more subjugated and they are in greater need of the benefit of reservation policy. So subclassification can be done and we hope it shall be done. But there is one thing left to understand and which is very important for you to know as well. If Indra Sawhney judgment allowed subclassification of backward classes, then why in Chinaya judgment in 2004, Supreme Court disallowed subclassification of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? The answer seems to be in the misreading of Indra Sawhney judgment by the Supreme Court in the Chinaya judgment. Also in yesterday's judgment, Supreme Court has taken the stand that Chinaya judgment is erroneous. It was incorrect. The judges were mistaken. They misunderstood the Indra Sawhney judgment. The majority judgment in the Indra Sawhney case read like this in one place. We feel that exclusion of such socially advanced members will make the class a truly backward class and would more appropriately serve the purpose and object of Clause 4, 16.4. So in the Indra Sawhney judgment, the judges were of opinion that creamy layer among OBC must be excluded so that the purpose of reservation is better met. However, the judges cautioned that this discussion is confined to other backward classes only and has no relevance in case of scheduled tribe and scheduled caste. It appears that in the Chinaya judgment, Supreme Court misunderstood the Indra Sawhney judgment to be not applicable to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. But however, only this question of excluding the creamy layer was not applicable to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, not the entire judgment. What the judges mentioned in the bracket was applicable only to this particular para of exclusion of such socially advanced members. So such exclusion of creamy layer will not apply to scheduled tribe and scheduled caste. That was the point, not the entire judgment. But the Chinaya judgment thought the entire judgment is not applicable. So if subclassification of OBC is allowed in Indra Sawhney judgment, that will not be applicable to SC/ST. But that was not the case. But that's how the Supreme Court thought to be the case. And that's why subclassification was not allowed. But this in all likelihood will be corrected very shortly. So subclassification can be done. You can take it for granted that Supreme Court will allow this. Indira Sawhney judgment also allowed this. The Devendra Singh judgment of yesterday also has made up its mind that they are going to allow this. So out of the two questions, first we have almost come to understand that scheduled caste and scheduled tribe are not constitutionally homogeneous. Now we come to the second question. Can the concept of creamy layer be applied to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? In the Indira Sawhney judgment, judges specifically warned against this. They said this discussion is confined to OBC and has no relevance in case of STs and SCs. So clearly they didn't want the concept of creamy layer to be applied to SCs and STs. But yesterday's judgment of Supreme Court has alluded to this, that concept of creamy layer shall also be applied. And with that comes a danger. There are many legal jurists who are of the opinion that scheduled caste subclassification should not be based on economic condition. The reason is that caste is a social problem in India. It does not go away with some degree of educational or economic mobility. Way back in 1976, in the N.M. Thomas case, Supreme Court said that scheduled castes are not castes, they are class. Because even with considerable educational, economic or social mobility, the humiliation and violence of untouchability does not cease. It does not stop. Even the most affluent and powerful member of scheduled caste also have to face this atrocity of untouchability. Just to bring a case in point, a minister in the Himachal Pradesh government, and obviously you will agree that he had considerable social standing, was disallowed from entering a temple in the state in January 2020. So the other side of the argument is reservation become necessary to ensure representation in government and society to encounter these deep-rooted structures of caste hierarchy, domination and oppression. There is another good reason that has been put forward by many, that power of subclassification should not be given to the states because that will open the door for vote bank politics. Depending upon the political economy, the vote bank base, this classification would be done in an arbitrary manner by the state governments. That is at least the fear. Therefore, one line of legal opinion is that state must keep itself clear from inter se classification, meaning subclassification within scheduled caste, based on economic well-being of some of the members of scheduled caste. However, inter se classification is imperative and a fundamental requirement for our democracy that all communities within the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe must be adequately represented in the society, polity and government, so that this principle of equity operate in governance and administration. So subclassification should be done, but now it is debatable. Subclassification will be done on basis of economic well-being or on the basis of historical subjugation and atrocities. The understanding of this is important because this will decide the future of our reservation policy. Indications are that the concept of creamy layer is going to be introduced in SC/STs because the legal jurisprudence is moving fast in this direction. There is a vast belief in the legal ecosystem, and rightly so, that tiny elite are gobbling up the benefits of reservation. And this opinion is there since long back. In 1975, celebrated and cherished Justice Krishna Iyer observed the same. More recently, in the Jarnail Singh case of 2018, Supreme Court observed that certain caste groups or subgroups have come out of untouchability or backwardness by virtue of belonging to the creamy layer. And the yesterday's judgment, the Devendra Singh case, seems to have been inspired from the Jarnail Singh case of 2018, because orally the judges made reference to Jarnail Singh case. But you must be aware that government has filed a review petition against Jarnail Singh case. That is why advocates in Supreme Court pointed out that since there is a review petition filed by the government, Jarnail Singh case should not be alluded to or referred to or made a basis for the court's decision. But the review petition is still pending and judges are still alluding to the Jarnail Singh case of 2018. Additionally, the 108th constitutional amendment reserving 10% seat for economically weaker section among the upper caste has reinforced this idea that reservation is the tool for economic development. So people who are already economically well off, people who belong to the creamy layer, they must not get benefit of reservation. This opinion has built up. So naturally, this will be translated into the realm of reservation of SC/STs as well. And yesterday in the Devendra Singh case, the court openly asked whether it is not unfair for some caste within the scheduled caste to take away all the benefits of reservation. So that would give you enough food for your thought. And you also must think about it, whether the concept of creamy layer should be applied to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe or not. But irrespective of your thinking, whatever judgment of Supreme Court will come, you must understand, and as a good citizen, you must accept and use that too in the mains exam. Now I'll leave you with the questions. Have a very happy Diwali.